What's going on, boys? Thanks to our patrons and Fiverr customers, arm yourselves, typology stuff. But before we get into that, Steak Fry, a talented musician, died either late last year or early this year. I don't know all the details, but I think it was brain cancer. And it sucks because he was very talented and very young. I'll link my favorite song of his in the description. Anyway, there's going to be a memorial show for him next month. Paying respects to a musician with music seems like a good thing to do. Now, Maniac is one of my favorite musicians in this crowd, and he's raising money so he can attend. He's about $150 from his goal. In the pinned comment is his Bandcamp. If you want some good music and to support something good, consider buying one of his albums. Void Trash is my favorite. It is a compilation of some of my favorite songs, including Stop Talking and Sports. But all his stuff is good, and he's a good egg. Someone with the sort of passion and skin in the game you would want to see at a memorial show. And if you don't want to buy any of his albums, his Cash App is in the pinned comment too. Okay, on to the typology stuff. Psychopath and high-level INFJs. What separates them from their more common brethren. We'll be using two models here for the two sorts of high-echelon INFJs. Sam Roberts, a radio personality, representing the psychopaths, and Vito Corleone, representing the high-level INFJs. And I'll link a documentary about Sam Roberts in the description if you want to see some of this stuff at work. The first thing to note about psychopath and high-level INFJs is, in their methods, they are similar. The first noticeable difference between psychopath and high-level INFJs and the rest is there is a solid sense of identity, but it's more than that. They have some of the solidest identities among humans. It's almost like a singularity of identity. Hyperdense. They know exactly who they are and what they're about. And you can't manipulate them away from or shake them off that identity, which is a huge issue with normal INFJs. You'll hear many of them talk about not knowing who they are or feeling they know themselves only when they are totally alone. It's one of the things that makes them so powerful. They are almost beyond doubt. With any other sorts of people, with the right button pushes, you can make them doubt themselves. With psychopath and high-level INFJs, this does not happen. I read a comment on a Godfather video about Vito. Sonny thinks 2 weeks ahead. Tom Hagen thinks 10 years ahead. Vito Corleone thinks 100 years ahead. It's almost like they see the way the dominoes are falling and could fall, and they have a solid idea of which path they want to come about, or to bring about, rather. I think one of the reasons there is such a concentration of INFJs in or among human course correctors, people who change the course of history of the species, is when an INFJ finds themselves called upon by whatever calls on people to change the course of history, one of these things that typically wouldn't know themselves, wouldn't know where they're going or where they want to go, although on an unconscious level all INFJs are pulling little strings to make these smaller dominoes fall where their unconscious wants them to go, where they want them to be, and would socially exist to direct small groups, and by necessity being more of a fog than a rock, even to themselves, becomes such a diamond, so solid, so clear, so sharp, huge populations can be adjusted or mobilized by an individual. Things that would normally take decades or centuries can happen in 5 years. And it can happen in 5 years not just because of their clarity, but also because of the way FE changes at a high level. Now, normally FE is an output function, but also an input function. FE takes in emotion, and not voluntarily a lot of the time, or it takes in sociality, and then it puts out emotion and sociality, or socialization. And even when practiced, it is a lot like clay. Many people all at once can put their hands on it and mold it, whether or not the FE user wants it to happen. It's one of the things that stinks about FE. If you aren't at this highest level, your insides are very much at the whims of other people. And even if you practice negating it, you'll still be dealing with that or with those effects. Now, Psychopath and high-level INFJs are different. FE takes on a less organic quality. There is almost no, or much less, ironically, human give and take. On the input side of things, FE functions more like a scanner. It surveys, it gets readings, and it prints them out. Now, this is happening with normal FE, but I visualize normal FE more like nerves. You're receiving information, but you are also feeling it. With Psychopath and high-level INFJs, they are not feeling it. They are receiving the data and analyzing it with detached eyes. They're harder to manipulate or fool or throw off because either they don't feel what they're reading the way normal FE types would, or if they are feeling it, then it doesn't affect them the same way. It doesn't register the same way. They aren't going to fall for social tricks. They see them. It's almost like they have an outsider's perspective on themselves. We often talk about INFJs operating all on this weird hive mind. With Psychopath and high-level INFJs, it's almost like, or they're almost like, Harbinger from Mass Effect. The controlling element of this hive is placing a lot of attention on this individual unit. When you're dealing with normal INFJs, it feels like either you're talking to nobody or you are talking to this individual's idea of you or someone capable of getting what they want out of you. With Psychopath and high-level INFJs, this is not the case. You do feel you are talking to something. Now, that something isn't human, but it is something. Like a possessed body. You can do whatever you want to the body, but whatever is possessing it, the spirit, is unaffected because it's inhabiting the body, but it isn't the body. It's a weird phenomenon. And then on the output side of FE, FE as a function is always a bit predatory. But with normal people, FE is like an animal. If you feed it and treat it well, it will act kindly. If you poke it with a stick, it will bite you. At least that is the instinct. How that plays out will be a bit different depending on the individual, but at its base, FE is pretty simple. Experiences, conditioning, and or training, practice, influence the expression, but at its base, it's an animal. With Psychopath and high-level INFJs, FE does not operate this way. Their FE is a lot more like a computer. And we discussed this with input, but it's important in output. And that's for two reasons. One, it does not operate the way typical FE, typical people do, and two, it's operating at a high level. Very effective. They know exactly what to do or say, how to do or say it, whom to do or say it to get what they want. And that's concerning because, one, you don't always know what they want because they're not living right now, they're living 100 years in the future. And you don't know what is prompting their actions, if anything. As in, if you step on a normal FE type's shoes, whatever they do, you get the sense, you know, their actions are informed by the fact you stepped on their shoes. You can feel it. Even if they don't, if they're smart enough not to make it obvious. Whereas with a psychopath or a high-level INFJ, they seem to be taking actions that don't make any sense. You don't know why they're doing anything, because what is a concern to you is not a concern to them. Their concerns, whatever those might be, are somewhere else. So with Sam Roberts, the psychopath INFJ, I love, by the way, the fact Anthony Cumia and ISTP Dampier, complete piece of shit in his own right, instantly smelled Sam Roberts for what he was and took every single opportunity to let him know he knew what he was in the middle of groups of people who had no idea what was really going on, or the extent to which Cumia was recognizing and mocking him. And of course, it didn't matter in the end. Sam got what he wanted. Opie and Anthony gone, Steve Carlisi dead, everyone who could oppose him out of the way, also he could fund his sneaker and wrestling action figure collection. Now, what does Sam actually want? I don't know. That's what's weird about these people. He has a fixation on professional wrestling, but that's a lot of manipulation horsepower directed at being somewhat involved in wrestling. It's baffling, but nobody can deny his effectiveness. He is at the top. Decades of scheming to get where he is, and nobody could ever throw him. The most interesting thing to me about Sam is it's like nothing can affect him. Even when he is outright and utterly humiliated, the butt of a joke or an embarrassment, it's like it does not affect him. Things that would destroy a neurotypical person, he was always in control. The ultimate power bottom. And then you have someone like Vito Corleone. You get the sense he had precognition. He might not know exactly what's going to happen, but he can read the broad strokes instantly. Like Sollozzo's hit. He knew something horrible was going to happen the instant Sonny opened his mouth. Or Don Fanucci. I swear, people are aware of typology even if they don't believe in or don't care about typology. In The Godfather Part 2, De Niro, or young Vito, gives Don Fanucci the coldest, sharpest INFJ stare I have ever seen, which is again distinct from the INTJ or any other NJ stare. He knew from the very beginning something was off, and then that moment they meet about the money, Vito looks at him the way a predator looks at its prey. This clown doesn't realize he's swimming with a shark, and what's about to happen will change the trajectory of the Corleone bloodline. And the most important point here is I do think he sees all of this in that moment. That's what that look is. It is not just a predatory look, it is being struck with a vision of the future. And you realize every single thing Vito does past that point is to equip his family, particularly Michael, with everything they will need to be safe and happy. And even when the situation changes, that is always what he's doing. And it makes the end of the first movie such a tragedy because I think he can see what running the family will do to Michael. I think that's part of why he's so sad in the end. He sees it right now, and he's right about it. So if they are so similar, what separates Psychopath and high-level INFJs? Well, I would say it's the nature of their aims. Because, frankly, I don't know if there is a psychological term for it, but high-level INFJs are essentially just psychopaths aimed in a more positive direction. Because if you, for a time, disabled their ability to aspire, they would be identical. The psychopaths use all their abilities to gain exclusively for themselves, or to harm others in the most intense ways. Whereas high-level INFJs, who are not above gaining for themselves or harming others, they are focused on moving or mobilizing a selected population in a direction that will benefit that population, whether that's a family or a group. And whether or not that direction is actually a good thing doesn't matter. With their focus, their intentions are positive, and they are stuck on them like a tick. Versus psychopath INFJs who enjoy suffering wholesale, or enjoy gain for its own sake, like dragons on top of a pile of gold. The psychopath wields power for dominance, the high level wields power for a vision. But in either case, both in their essence and in the way the world affects them and the way they affect the world, you get the sense this individual is not human, or not exclusively human. Something weird is going on there. Anyway, we will cut it here. Remember to pick up one of Maniac's albums to support his attending the Steak Fry Memorial. Everything you need is in the pinned comment. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you haven't.